So today is the day where we start work on my crash damaged Aston Martin V8 Vantage. So in the last video I introduced you to my new purchase, this V8 Vantage, which we bought from auction as a non-running, non-driving car, which is a big risk to take. But in this video we're going to try and get it starting every time at the push of a button, and also start addressing some of the damage on the car. So the main problem at the moment with the car is the fact that everything is electronic and it has zero electronics working for one reason. I think the battery is absolutely goosed. We managed to get it started last time, but only off a jump pack. Woo! Without that it was dead as a dodo, there was nothing. So I bought a new battery, let's try and get that in, but it's not as easy as that because the battery is behind the seats, which are electric. So you can't move the seats without having a battery, which is a bit awkward. So I've got to try and find a way to get the seats moved to then be able to access the battery, which we need to change. So I need a battery in order to change the battery. So let's see what we can do. So the first thing to do was to try and get a little bit of juice in the car in order to be able to move these electric seats. I used the Topdon jump pack, which I'm going to leave a link for in the description if you want to grab yourself one. So once we've got some access and we've got the seats out of the way, I could start looking at how to get this battery out, because it was quite well tucked behind all the carpets. Okay, so here is the battery in question. As you can see, it's accessible with a jump pack quite easily, but a lot of it is obstructed by what we have here. So I think this metal trim's got to come off. We may have to peel back some other parts underneath that. So to be honest with you, I'm just winging it, so we'll just see what happens. We'll get this trim off and go from there. So to remove this trim, there was one 8mm on the left hand side by the battery, and the rest of it was just Phillips head screws holding the rest of it in, which I thought was a bit strange to have a combination of all of these. Next up, there was a strap holding the battery in place. I believe it was a 10mm off the top of my head, one down the back of the battery and one at the front, which held this strap in place. There is also something which holds it onto place. It's like a bracket which is bolted onto a sliding rail. You've got to undo these bolts, slide those off, and then the battery should be free from the car. And the final thing was to fold myself in half in order to be able to pull the battery out in the small gap which folding the seat forward actually gives you. So that was probably one of the most fussy batteries I've ever took out, and hopefully that's not a sign of things to come on this car. But what you can see as soon as you've got that out is, I'm not sure if this is it's not going to be a bonded aluminium chassis, but you know, it's definitely got parts which are. So what you can see here is obviously the aluminium part, and then the orange stuff here is the glue, which is also then, I believe, held together by these rivets. So you know, that's not the normal way that you'd build a car, so it's quite nice to see some exotic kind of features on this Aston Martin. So let's see if we can wrestle in that new battery. So after folding my gut back into the car to be able to get this new battery in, it was just a case of doing up those bottom brackets, fasten everything back in, and then everything should work a dream. So the whole car has now come to life here. The fuel pump's going, all the dash is on. Let's see, before I put the last bits back together, whether it's going to start. Come on, baby. So we've got a few warning lights on the dash straight away, but you know, we're kind of familiar with that, so yeah. Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, what? Okay, take two. I locked the doors and we're going to go again, so hopefully it fires up this time and stays running. Last time it just cut out straight away, so let's see if it works. Yes! Straight up, yes, and it's staying running. That's what we're talking about. Oh, it sounds nice as well, it sounds nice. So we now have an Aston Martin which runs. That's better than what it said in the advert, so that is a big win. Obviously we knew it started already from the last video, but it now starts under its own power, so massive win. Feeling super positive. The next thing I want to do is run a code check on the car and see if there's any code stored that I'm not aware of that might be a fault with the actual engine itself, but I don't think it is by the sound of it, because it sounds pretty sweet, but there's definitely going to be some faults elsewhere on the car. So to do that, I plugged in this fault code scanner into the OBD port and checked through all of the modules on the car, and it all came back looking pretty healthy, so I was pretty happy with that. But if you do want to grab yourself one of these OBD readers, there's a link in the description with a discount code. So in terms of fault codes on this car, it's actually looking pretty clear. I can't really believe my luck, if I'm being honest with you. I think I've struck gold, so anyway, I think what I'm going to do now, I've checked that, is I'll show you what the oil lights are on the dash and why I think they may be showing up, then we'll check the fluids, and then we've definitely got to have a sound check, 100%. So we've got 2 fault codes stored on the dash. We've got one for the brakes and then one for the alarm system. Now, the brakes, I think, is a pretty simple one because it comes up saying front brake pads are low, which I'd imagine is because of that corner where it's basically, you know, ripped the wheel off the car. I think that's just probably pulled the cables out for the brake pad wear sensors, so we can fix that pretty easily. I'm not worried about that. The alarm system service, I have no idea what that's about, so I'm going to have to do a bit of research about why that might be coming up and how to fix it, because that's a very annoying light that keeps flashing in your face. So the engine on this Aston Martin is a little bit different to what you may find in your normal day-to-day car, and the reason being, not with the size of it, it's actually the fact that it's a dry sumped engine, which is kind of like a race engine, which means that the excess oil that isn't necessarily needed all the time but is stored, I think is stored externally to the rest of the oil, which means it's a shallower sump, and also means that there's less chance of oil surge from oil sloshing from one side of the car to the other. But I may be wrong on that, like that's just what I think I know, but I'm probably wrong. So the oil is stored here and the coolant over here, so let's check those out to make sure they're looking healthy. Oh, and it's also worth adding that you can't check the oil on these when the engine is cool, or you can, but it gives you an indication, but you're supposed to check it when it's hot.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Okay, so it actually turns out I was completely wrong. So that's what I've seen previously on dry sumped engines, but I'll show you how I found out I was wrong in just a second. So you can see here it says important dry sump oil system. It also says check oil level when cold, run at 2000 RPM for 20 seconds, turn off, wait 30 seconds, remove cap and check levels. So I'm going to let the car cool down now, and then we're going to check it over and just make sure there's plenty of oil in there. I think it's fine, and then we can do the sound check. Right, okay, oil level is looking perfect, so that means I have full confidence now to give this a good blip so we can hear how this gorgeous little 4.3 litre V8 actually sounds. How ridiculous does that sound? It sounds wicked, even though obviously we're inside, so it's going to seem louder than it actually is on the open road. I think we can do something in the future to spice that up a little bit, which hopefully won't cost too much money, but regardless, it still sounds wicked, but I think we can make it a little bit better. So now the Aston Martin starts up as and when it should without the need of a jump pack. So I think the next job on the car, it's got to be this wheel, isn't it? So I've been onto eBay and bought this. So this is the front wheel for an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and apart from the colour of it, it's exactly the same as what should be on this car. So fingers crossed, it should fit perfectly. Now this did come with a tyre, which I wasn't expecting it to, but there is a small problem with it. You can see here there is a massive flat spot in it. So even though it will be good just for rolling the car in and out of the garage, it will be no good for driving on. So I will have to get it changed before we actually drive this car on the road, but it will do the job for now. So this car in this state is not the easiest to jack up because the front is so low. I've got to jack it from the back, and even then, because of the front being lower, I couldn't get a jack under the back, so I had to drag the car onto a piece of wood to give myself that extra height, and then I could slide the jack under the rear and jack the car nice and high, which also brought the front up too. So with all the wheel bolts unfastened, the wheel was sort of free, but it was getting a bit jammed, but I think that's just because of the weight on it from the other half of the wheel, which is sort of staying on the car. So with a swift kick, the front half came off, and then I could pull off what was left. I'm not even being funny, but look at the shape of this wheel. That is just ridiculous. It doesn't even count as a wheel anymore. Wheels around, that is not a wheel anymore. That is scrap. So now that wheel is off, we can take a proper look at what damage is behind here, because, well, it could be bad. It could be bad. So the first thing, straight away, this wire hanging here, which is going to be why we're getting that brake pad front brake pads, low sensor level warning thing on the dash. So that's a nice easy fix. We can just put those wires back together. So we can see here we've got our anti-roll bar drop link, which has definitely seen better days. So we're going to need to get some new ones of those. I'll get one for each side, I think. And then also our tie rod is nice and bent too. So I'm going to try and replace that whole section so it's, as fresh as it can be under it. And apart from that, I think on first inspection we're all good. Access isn't the best, so it's quite hard to see. There is one bit of damage which I wasn't aware of at first, and that is, well, it's chassis damage but not chassis damage. It's this leg here. I actually found this in the boot, and it goes somewhere just about here, something like that, I think. Something like that anyway, but yeah, it's not a structural part of the car. It actually just holds the headlight, so it's very minor, but it is an inconvenience. So I'm going to have to see if this can be straightened out, I think, and then re-welded on or something like that. But obviously to do that, I want to make sure we get it, millimetre perfect. So I want to get the full front end stripped off so we can do it in perfect symmetry to make sure that's absolutely spot on and not a bodge job. So maybe there's another solution, I'm not sure, but I think that's probably the best one at the moment. But the suspension itself looks okay, the wishbones look okay, so I think we've got away pretty lightly on here. It looks to me like this wheel has, well, this wheel has took the majority of the hit, which, as I say, is probably a good thing, considering it's probably the cheapest bit to change. And good news as well, also the alley chassis behind here, that also looks perfectly fine here as well as at the front, so yeah, I think we've done alright here. I think we've done alright. Let's get this much better condition wheel on the car. So luckily none of the studs were bent, which means the new wheel went on a dream, as it should I suppose. But with that done, I think I was then comfortable to then drop the car on the floor and see if I can get it out of the garage. So it was time to fire it up, but you'll hear in a second there is something else wrong with the car. So as you can hear, there's a little squeak that's going while the engine's running now, and I believe this is coming from the idler pulleys, which definitely need to be changed with the auxiliary belt in the future. So then it was time to dubiously pull the car out of the garage, but it didn't take long for something to go wrong and for it to run itself over. That's a problem. So super minor thing, the car had essentially just caught the wheel arch lining and then pulled it underneath itself. So after reversing it a bit, tucking it back up out the way, I was able to get the car out of the garage. So the Aston Martin can now move and drive under its own steam with its new wheel on, but there is still lots of work to do. We've still got to, well, you tell me, there's so much we've got to do here. And also on top of what you can see here, we've got the tie rod end, the tie rod and the anti-roll bar drop link, which are damaged underneath there. And then also, as well as that, what I've just realised, which I was sort of aware of, is that once we move the car out, it is weeping a little bit of oil, so we've got a leak to fix somewhere, along with the idler pulley and auxiliary belt. So there's so much to do on this car just to even get it roadworthy before we even start modifying it, which I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to do because it looks so good modified. So now we know what we need to do on the Aston Martin to get it as a roadworthy car. I think we've got a good picture now of how much work it's actually going to entail, and luckily I'm not too worried, I'm not too scared. There's nothing on there which is making me absolutely bob myself, so that's good. But I need to get ordering some parts now. Now I know exactly what I'm going to need, and you guys are going to have to wait until next time to see what we do with the Aston. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos, and I'll catch you next time.